Hello and welcome back into the Arrowhead Pride Rapid Reaction Show. Normally I'm joined by Rocky Magana, but he was actually lucky enough to be at Arrowhead Stadium for Sunday Night Football. So very thankful to have my guy Ron Kopp stepping in this week, helping me hold it down on the Chiefs post-game show. We've got a lot to talk about, and we got to open, this thing being positive. The Chiefs are winners of 5 in a row. Ron, they're on a win streak. They're 8-4, sitting atop the division right now. But it's still kind of not exactly what you want to see. It's still kind of not exactly like a confident 8-4, I guess. Like the defense has been remarkable. Like the turnaround has just flat out been remarkable for this team. Spags deserves all kinds of credit for where they were at early in the season to where they are at right now. So you have to absolutely feel good about this because we've got a large enough sample size now that this thing, I think, is for real. I talked about it earlier this week. I feel like they're playing a little bit above their head. Like, I don't think that they're like a truly elite defense, which is how they've been playing, but they're not the worst defense in football either. And that was what I kind of kept saying early on in the season. So first thoughts, initial takeaways, kept the win streak alive, got the big AFC West win, still sitting atop the division, but there's still a few things that you'd like to see them improve upon as we move forward throughout the season.
Yeah, we're talking about it before the show starts, Serda, but it really does feel like with the defense playing better, because they are, it's legitimate, like you're mentioning. I mean, this is 5 straight games, probably a rough average about 10 to 11 points per game in that 5-game stretch, all wins in that case. But just the fact that I think this defensive performance is starting to, make Andy maybe, play like or call a game kind of like it's the Alex Smith era all over again. It's Alex Smith kind of play calls. It's settling for field goals when you should be going for it on 4th down. It's just non-aggressive play calling at times. Runs on 2nd and longs, all that kind of thing. And the defense has been able to carry them. It's been great. That's the great part about it is the defense has absolutely done it. I mean, holding Denver to 3 points until 9 minutes left in the 4th quarter. I mean, unbelievable still that how good they're playing, but man, the offense, it's kind of, I feel like it's kind of leaking into Andy's mind. Like he's got to play like this. And I'm telling myself, hey, he's playing like it right now. It's regular season. They can kind of, win ugly right now. It doesn't really matter how they win, but in the playoffs, I'm hoping he doesn't resort to trusting his defense too much, because there's going to be offenses that'll be able to put up more than, the 22 points the Chiefs were able to put up tonight. And 7 of those were from our guy, Daniel Sorensen. So, the offense still does need to pick it up.
Yeah, and there's been weird things and outliers that you can point to with this defensive run, like everything that the Raiders went through prior to that game, the Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb getting hurt, Amari Cooper getting COVID right before that game, the Packers not having Aaron Rodgers. But the defense has still been playing lights out. And so I'm not taking anything away from that defensive performance. But we talked about it earlier this week on Show and BK. Like, the Chiefs are 8-4. They're sitting atop the division, and you have no real confidence, I don't think, in anybody in the AFC right now, unless you're like a true believer in the Patriots. And that defense is also very, very good for New England. But as far as the AFC goes, everybody, it feels like, has kind of just been sitting around waiting for this thing to kind of fall apart and play right into the Chiefs' hands. And it is doing that. But I still question whether or not you can get to where you want to go later on in the season and in the playoffs if the defense is the best thing. Like, if this offense is truly, this is what it is, like, nobody's scared of this offense right now. And we're all sitting around saying, well, it's Mahomes, it's Tyreek Hill, it's Travis Kelce, it's Andy Reid, so they'll get it figured out sooner or later, but they keep not getting it figured out. And coming off of a bye week, this is when we assumed they were going to have it figured out. And outside of Andy Reid's opening script, it just didn't feel like they had a lot in this game. They're just simply a better team than the Denver Broncos, and that's why they still won.
Yeah, you mentioned coming off a bye week. I mean, this is just kind of almost a pathetic performance. You're talking about, Andy Reid's history coming off a bye week, his preparation. The opening script was great, but after that, like you mentioned, it was bad. I mean, I have a stat for you here, Serta, which is mind blowing to me, but this game finishes Mahomes' worst single game career passer rating. his entire career, 57.3. I don't think he played that bad, but I think that just shows you, because obviously the drops that turn into interceptions are factored into that. But I just think that shows you how ineffective and how ugly this offense was tonight, that, even in a game where Mahomes wasn't necessarily bad, he wasn't just, giving up for grabs or just not making, throws consistently. He still has his worst career passer rating, 6.3 yards per attempt, doesn't get over 200 yards tonight, doesn't throw a touchdown. It's kind of just, you'd think this is the time where that offense would come alive. One of the things I was kind of excited about in this stretch coming off the bye week is that they're playing 3 AFC West opponents back to back to back. I kind of just thought that would get them in the swing of things. It's a familiar opponent. They've been seeing this Fangio defense for a couple of years now. And it's still just, after that opening script, like we said, it just, nothing was really happening at all. So yeah, it is discouraging a little bit. But this Denver defense is good. You got to give them credit. This Denver defense, their secondary is really good. And, the Chiefs were able to do enough. That opening script is important, but it does seem like Andy's resorting to that Alex Smith era where, hey, let's get an opening script touchdown. Let's get up maybe 10-0, 13-0 early, then just coast, maybe not play calls aggressively, trust our defense, trust our special teams, which has been working lately, but that's not how you win Super Bowls. You got to trust your offense. So I hope he gets back to that eventually. And the offense allows him to get back to that.
And I was big on the point last season that I felt like the Kansas City Chiefs kind of walk through the entire regular season. And I don't think that that's what they're doing now, because they've had to overcome so much to get to this point. And so having to do that and now being at 8-4 is really impressive. So I'm not trying to diminish anything that they've accomplished there, but you're right. Like, we will never have a better example of Andy playing it too close to the vest than right before halftime, when they got the ball back with over a minute left, multiple timeouts. And Andy said, nope, we're going into half. We're going to take this 7-point lead or 10-point lead or whatever it was at the time. We're going to go into the halftime and we're just going to sit on that. And what was even more discouraging about that is that they couldn't even run the clock out properly. Like they didn't get a first down, and they had to give the ball back to the Denver Broncos. And so the Broncos got the ball back right before the half, when they were just trying to run the clock out and go into the break with a lead. And that is straight up Andy Reid era Alex Smith, like clock management, conservative. We're going to be efficient with the ball. We're going to score on the opening drive, like you mentioned. And then after that, we're just not going to hurt ourselves, and we're not going to put ourselves in bad situations. And I kind of understand them reverting to that because of the turnovers and all of the inexplicable ones, especially. But I do feel like we can point to the major issue in this offense not being that they have a total lack of talent. It's just that they play a lot of undisciplined football. They drop the football like crazy, and it leads to turnovers. And it's every single week. And it's Travis Kelce, it's Tyreek Hill. And that's where it starts. When those guys are doing it, then it, I feel like, becomes contagious to the other guys, because those other guys look up to those two and say they set the tone. We do everything through what they are able to accomplish on the football field because they're better than everybody else. And so if you can't fix it with them, I don't think there's any fixing it at this point in the season. Like, we're in week 13. We can't keep talking about this offense like, okay, you got to go back to practice. You got to figure out, you got to hit the jugs, do whatever you got to do to not drop the football. We're deep into the season. We're starting to heavily talk about playoffs now. And it's still on a weekly basis, drop after drop. And then there was another drop that wound up being an interception tonight. It's just who they are this year. And it feels like you just got to kind of live with it. I don't think the conservative offensive play calling is something that's going to last the rest of the year or something. Like, inevitably, they're going to have a game that's similar to the Raiders, and that's who they've got coming up next week. But the drops and stuff, like, that's just who they are this year. I think we're late enough into the season that you just have to accept that.
Yeah, you're talking about elite players. You're talking about all-pro tight end, all-pro receiver, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, two of the best at their position, literally giving the ball away for you. I mean, it's one thing when it's McCole Hardman dropping it, by the way. You know, he was pretty non-existent. You know, I'd love to see the snap counts because it didn't seem like he was in the game. And that's the kind of stuff that, you know, his drops in the past have kind of put him in this doghouse. Well, you can't put Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce in the doghouse. You need them in your offense to score points, and it's just they are giving the ball away. This is I counted 4. There might have been another one I'm thinking. I know Tyreek has had 3 himself this season where the ball has fell off his hands and turned into an interception. And then Travis has had one obviously against Dallas, and there might have been another one I'm missing, but that just when your best players are making that big of negatively impactful plays. And then the other part of that too is, Mahomes has not been perfect this year. We all know that he's not been perfect in this stretch of winning. Well, your receivers need to help you out. It just seems like as soon as Mahomes is kind of on point and feeling himself, that's when those drops happen. And then there's other times where Mahomes is missing passes, and it's like, yeah, it makes him look bad, but altogether, if those original, if those passes that were intercepted get caught, then all of a sudden, yeah, those bad passes he actually had don't get doubled on with these interceptions. So all that to say, yeah, the offense is just out of sync. I've been saying it the entire win streak. I thought it was kind of coming back in the Raiders. I thought the Cowboys game they did play efficient football. But this game it was kind of like that Giants and Packers game again, man. It's out of sync. It's as soon as, like I said, as soon as Mahomes makes a good throw, it's dropped. But as soon as, a receiver is open, maybe Mahomes misses and that kind of thing. And the run game wasn't very efficient either. I mean, you're talking about, I got the stats here. You're talking about 74 rushing yards from Clyde and Darrell combined on 19 carries. 12 yards was the longest carry. I was hoping for a little more from the rushing game too. I will say that I was hoping that they'd be able to control the ball, just kind of pound the run game. And they weren't really able to, honestly. There's a few big runs, but I was expecting a little more out of Clyde and Darrell, to be honest with you. And it's just you like Patrick to kind of be able to have that on his shoulders a little more still. Being able to not have the run game like that, but it would have helped for sure to have Clyde and Darrell kind of being able to run more than and be more efficient than they were tonight for sure.
Yeah, and I do think that one thing we've seen recently that is a positive from this like more conservative, we're going to try to just take what the defense gives us approach is that they're finally using the running backs in the passing game a little bit. And we saw Clyde get involved early that way tonight. And then we saw Darrell come up with a couple of huge catches that went for decent gains. And that's something that's been absent from this offense for a few years now, but it's because they haven't had to do it. Like they could just move the football down the field. It will. And so they didn't have to kind of manufacture those things. And this offense does have to do that. And so the fact that they're finally starting to do that, maybe we'll actually see Clyde in the passing game more. I still think and believe that he can be effective that way for this offense. And we know Darrell is a strong pass catcher, and that's why they like using him. And that's why even since Clyde came back, it's still basically like a 50-50 time split between both of them. And they're both getting involved in the offense. And some of that has to do with the fact that they're just not getting the football down the field, and their pass catchers just don't seem that reliable right now. But at some point, we kind of have to just accept that this is who the offense is, because like I mentioned, we're late into the year, and I still think and I still believe that a lot of people assume that Mahomes can turn it on at any point and that Mahomes can flip the switch, and this Chiefs offense will all of a sudden look like, okay, they can go put up 40 whenever they want again. I don't know if we're ever going to be confident in that. Like, you're still going to go into it on a weekly basis, and they got the Raiders coming up again, like I already mentioned. They dropped 41 on them a couple of weeks ago, and you're going to assume that there's a chance they could do that again because of who they are and what the history would tell us about this team. But I don't feel confident they can truly do that against good teams in the postseason right now. Like, I got to see more of it. I got to see it consistently. Like, you can't just drop 41 on the Raiders and then play like this against the Broncos, because the Broncos are a better defensive team, but they're not that much better than some of the other competition that you've been struggling against. So I just, they got to be consistent, man. They have to put it together at some point. We're just a lot later in the season than I would like to be to still be talking about inconsistencies and play on a weekly basis.
Man, it just feels like Andy just like really does not want to like accept that he shouldn't maybe trust the passing offense or Mahomes maybe to drop back as much as he still wants to. He knows Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL. He knows what he has. He knows what this offense can do. He's seen it, obviously. But I still feel like there's this little key in the back in his back pocket right now that he could pull out at some point, and I feel like they still can, where they just spam the run game, where they just spam these downhill runs where you're down blocking. You got either Trey Smith or Joe Tooney pulling up a hole. You got Blake Bell or Noah Gray or Michael Burton filling a hole and allowing Darryl and Clyde to eat up run yards. I do feel like that's still in their back pocket where they could pull that out and in the playoffs, maybe when these defenses are just really selling out, to have those two high soft zone defenses where the run game is kind of the way to go there. I feel like they're still not committing fully to it. And right now, hey, they haven't really necessarily had to. They've won 5 straight games, but I do feel like with this passing offense just still not being out of sync, you still have drops, you still have, obviously the turnovers. I think they still have that where if they really want to, they could really just spam it. They could really just, pound the rock, go kind of just, do it out of different formations, kind of mix it up, a lot of pre-snap motion, but just end up pounding the rock with Darryl and Clyde, getting downhill, eating up those soft zones and really forcing defenses to really commit to stopping the run. This offensive line is ready to do that. I guess that's my main point, is that, it's not the running backs at all, really. I mean, Clyde and Darryl have been nice, but this offensive line is at its best when it is downhill, blowing dudes off the ball. You see it in spurts, man. You really do. It just, they don't commit to it completely like I feel like they could. And I feel like that could just happen any game now where Andy just says, you know what, like that Buffalo Bills game last year, as I feel like we all recall, they get 200 rushing yards as a team or something. That was Clyde's best game. I feel like they still have that somewhere with this offensive line. They could really dominate a game like that. They just haven't really fully committed to doing that, but it could happen at any game, I feel like.
And I want to take a longer look at the defense and the way they played tonight, because obviously they're still playing great and they've been on a run, and we kind of saw them start to take this turn where, they got blown out by the Buffalo Bills, but they held them scoreless in the second half. And then Washington, they kind of struggled in the first half of that game, but then came out in the second half and looked locked down and put up a bunch of points. And now, against the New York Giants, they allowed 17 points. Against the Green Bay Packers, they allowed 7 points. Against the Raiders, 14 points, then 9 points to Dallas and 9 points to Denver. Like, that's an impressive run. And I understand there was some circumstances there in some of those matchups that, make those teams not as competitive as they should have been in that game. But you still have to be impressed with the way that they have stepped up. And I mean, Dan Sorensen got a pick 6 tonight. And Ben Neiman is the guy who hit Teddy Bridgewater and affected the pass and made it. And then it was a nice play by Dan. Like the ball came straight to him, so he didn't have to do any work on the interception. But then he stayed on his feet and wound up taking it to the house for a pick 6. So that's something Dan's always been capable of doing. And those are some of the plays that have gotten him on the field over the last couple of years. I still think that he gets too much playing time personally, but it worked out in your favor tonight. And it just seems like everything on the defense is clicking to the point where, yes, Ben Neiman and Daniel Sorensen had a huge impact on this game.
Yeah, I know everyone wants to talk about the pass rush that's improved with Melvin Ingram and everything, but in my opinion, and it's continued today, and I think it's kind of strengthened the narrative that this win streak has been all about the defensive back play, the secondary play of the Chiefs. I was worried, honestly, tonight with Rashad Fenton not being able to play. He's been so good this year. When they're in those nickel packages where they have Snead in the inside slot cornerback position, you're vulnerable if you don't have a great, a reasonable guy out there, the outside cornerback, and it's been Fenton, and he's been so good, like I said. But, I think tonight we saw plays from Thornhill, Thornhill playing that robber coverage where he's kind of reading the quarterback's eyes, just trying to make a play on the ball. Does it perfectly, makes that interception. And then you mentioned the Sorensen play. Yeah, no, the secondary right now is just playing with a hot streak. I feel like cornerback is all about confidence. It's all about, the best cornerbacks. We all see it, across the NFL. They play with the swagger. They're talking a bunch of crap. They're confident. That's just how you have to be. You kind of have to be almost insanely confident at that position. And everything is going against you at that position, that you have to be able to just, not think about any of the negative plays and just kind of be overconfident in yourself. And right now, this cornerback group and safety group is being able to play like that because of how well they're playing, how the results have come. I mean, I know they kind of lucked out not having to play Amari Cooper, but during this 5-game win streak, they've shut down guys like Devontae Adams and CeeDee Lamb for a half. And obviously tonight, a great, this is one of the best receiving trios in the entire NFL. And they couldn't really get anything going. So, hats off to the cornerback group. Charvarius Ward still playing very well. He continues to impress. Shout out DeAndre Baker. I think they started with Mike Hughes, but you saw Baker played down the stretch, I think, in the second half, and kind of finished the game off as that cornerback 3 and made a few good plays. So, all that to say, this entire secondary right now is just playing with such confidence, playing with their, kind of just intelligence, smarts, and it's really paying off. And there's no reason to see it kind of stopping right now. This cornerback group, the safety group's playing really well.
I'm glad you brought up DeAndre Baker, because I wanted to mention him, because I was a little worried coming into this game without Rashad Fenton, because he's been so good. He has been one of their best corners since he started playing a significant role in the defense, and not having him in this game was like, Mike Hughes was an underrated part of how bad that defense was early in the season. So I was worried coming into this football game. And so it was nice to see DeAndre Baker actually get some run, because he's a guy that's just been inactive a lot this season. And it was nice to see him get some run and actually have some impact plays in the game. And Charvarius Ward, since bouncing back from that injury like early on in the year, has played fantastic. And we know what L'Jarius Sneed is. And that secondary is legitimately good. Like, I feel like we could definitively say that now, where Tyrann Mathieu, Juan Thornhill playing in the role that he's playing. You're going to sprinkle Dan in because that's what Spags does. But with Rashad Fenton, with Charvarius Ward, with L'Jarius Sneed, when all those guys are healthy, you feel pretty confident in this secondary now. And then if you actually get something out of DeAndre Baker and Mike Hughes while Rashad Fenton is hurt, that's great too. But you can't ask for much more than what the Chiefs secondary has done over the last several weeks. And it does help that the pass rush is finally making an impact. And man, Melvin Ingram is going to wind up going down as just a huge addition to this team. Like, if they do truly get back to where we want them to go, which is another Super Bowl, we're going to look back at that Melvin Ingram trade and say, like, man, they got a deal there. They got a steal in bringing in Melvin Ingram, because he's getting a lot more snaps now. He's got a lot of juice, obviously, and it has made the whole defensive front look different. And, Chris Jones was a little quiet tonight, had some impact plays, but not like the dominant play that we saw him show up for against the Dallas Cowboys. But he's still Chris Jones. He's still going to have his massive monster games. Frank Clark, Jaron Reed are alive and actually making impact plays again. So, like, the defense as a whole, it's hard to find any reason to think that they can't keep this up. I still believe that, like, when you're playing truly playoff caliber opponents, like, we're going to see them struggle a little bit. Like, if you were to take on the New England Patriots, I think that the game plan the Broncos had tonight with Javonte Williams is something you're going to see the Patriots do a lot of. And they want to run the ball and they want to play defense too. So that's something that could be an issue, like, down the line when you're talking about playoffs or something like that. But I think you have to feel confident that this defense is at least some version of this moving forward. Maybe not quite as great as they've been over the last 5-6 games, but some version of this moving forward, and not what we saw early in the year.
Yeah, I think the run defense has improved so much over this stretch of winning. Tonight, it did not, it kind of felt more like the old run defense we all complain about, where, it just seems like it's 6-7 yards every carry. There's a bunch of, yards after contact by the opposing running backs. And that you might just have to chalk it up to an offensive line that's run blocking really well right now, kind of finding a groove. And obviously Javonte Williams, who is a budding star in this league, a guy that I was not happy to see go to Denver. But what kind of erases some of that run defense stuff, as long as you can get him to third down, this Chiefs third down defense has been one of the best in the NFL over the win streak. You look at, stuff like EPA per play, and they're number one, pass, or not, maybe not number one, but one of the top, pass drop back per EPA, one of the lowest on third down over this last stretch. And that's what happened today too. You know, the Broncos got a few third downs for sure, but overall Denver only went 4 for 14 on third down. And we all saw that incredible 20-play drive they did. I just think that was a testament to this Chiefs situational defense that, you know, you can try and you can continue to go for these third downs. Denver got a couple of those on that drive, you know, some fourth down conversions as well. But, you know, eventually the way this defense is playing right now, the way Spags is dialing up third down and fourth downs right now, they're going to get that stop. And that's what happened on that play. It was they tried to get Javonte Williams on an inside run and the defense stepped up. So right now, I think, and this has always been the case, you know, with this defense, with how the offense normally plays, but they just need to be situationally sound. And, you know, right now they're obviously playing way over their skis and everything. They're playing really well in every phase of the defense, you know, in a defensive game, but specifically, they play really well situationally. Third down has been really good over the stretch, and it continued today. And it was a big reason why they were able to only, you know, allow 9 points, even though, like we all saw, you know, Javonte Williams was tearing them up pretty good. But when it came to third down, the Chiefs still only allowed 4-14. That's why this defense was still only allowing, like I said, 3 points through, like, you know, midway through the fourth quarter. That's an incredible, you know, another good game, another great game.
We can't get out of here without talking about these Chiefs linebackers too. We've spent so much time talking about the defense, and Willie Gay has made a huge difference. Like, having an athletic linebacker that is actually good in pass coverage for the most part has made a big difference in having him back. And he almost picked off Teddy Bridgewater tonight, just wasn't able to come up with it, but he read Teddy like from the snap and jumped the route and nearly picked it off. And then Anthony Hitchens had a hell of a block. It was flagged for a penalty, but Hitchens looked good tonight. He had some impact plays throughout the night. He looked quick on his feet. I thought he was really reading Teddy Bridgewater well and reading the offense well. And then that block, like, he just laid out a 300-something pound offensive lineman. So it wound up being a penalty, but it was an impressive play that a lot of people would debate about whether or not it should have been a penalty in the first place.
Yeah, no, I'm loving what we're seeing from Willie Gay lately. You know, you're right. No, I think Hitch looked pretty spry. Maybe it's just the bye week, but I did like the explosion and kind of the burst I saw from Hitch, even though, you know, one play he meets the running back in the backfield, can't wrap up the tackle, but, you know, it's good to see him get there. But Willie Gay is the guy that just continues to stand out to me, just the way he moves on the football field, the way he gets into throwing lanes quickly. The quarterbacks don't expect him to get in there quickly. This is the second week in a row. It looked like he almost had a pick six. Yeah, no, he's a playmaker, and that's what this linebacker position for the Chiefs has been missing, you know, for a few years, and that's why, you know, we talk about this defense being, you know, maybe the best in the Spagnuolo era. You know, you compare it to the 2019 defense. That linebacker group, you know, was good enough to win a Super Bowl, obviously, but didn't have the playmakers like a Willie Gay or even a Nick Bolton, honestly. So, you know, that's where you can kind of see the ceiling of this defense maybe a little higher than it was when they, you know, it was good enough to win a championship in 2019. So there's reason to be excited about this linebacker core right now, for sure.
So I think my final takeaway from this game, you know, your division leading Kansas City Chiefs, who through 13 weeks of the NFL season still find ways to frustrate you on a weekly basis and turn the football over in new and interesting ways. You know, this team can still be the absolute best team in the AFC. Like, it didn't look like that for a little bit, but everybody still had faith. Everybody still thought this team was too talented to struggle the way they were early in the year. And that's caught up to them a little bit now, where, okay, all of a sudden they're sitting atop the AFC again, where they've got a legitimate chance here to go on a run and still get a bye possibly, which seems absolutely crazy. But they got to figure out some things offensively. Like, they're winning football games, and you want to be positive and happy about that because it's tough to do that in the NFL. But they still got problems. The problems are still there. They haven't fixed all of the problems. The problems just aren't hurting them quite as much as they were early in the season. And part of that has to do with the defensive turnaround. So, final takeaway, I still think the Chiefs are the best team in the AFC, probably, once they figure things out offensively, and that defense is going to be good enough to win them football games moving forward. I just have to see it against other, like, playoff caliber competition.
Yeah, hey, they have everything in front of them in terms of they have three more AFC West games, 2 more straight here in the next coming weeks. All AFC opponents to end the schedule. So all that to say is they're in the thick of things in the AFC, and as long as they win, they'll pretty much control their destiny, unless obviously a team like the Patriots or a team with the tiebreaker over the Chiefs that has 4 losses as well wins out. But you have to kind of assume that one of those teams is going to lose, and as long as the Chiefs take care of business, that they could be in a really good position. But I've always I was thinking going into this or coming out of this bye week that the offense would be able to kind of get in a rhythm because they're playing familiar opponents. Well, maybe it's the defense that could kind of stay on this hot streak because they're playing teams like the Broncos, like the Chargers that they play. Obviously, Spags has been here for a few years and has played them a few times. Maybe that kind of aids them and allowing the offense to kind of play in cruise control and just get these wins. Because, as much as we complain about, some of how the offense is playing at some points, all that matters is they get to January and then they turn it on. Then, we don't know if they will or not right now, but, we've seen them do it. So we can give them the benefit of the doubt a little bit, right?
Yeah, all of that experience that they've acquired over the last few years is going to come up big in January, and hopefully we see them turn it on the way that we all assume that they can moving forward. Ron, thank you so much for joining me on the Arrowhead Pride Rapid Reaction Show. Really appreciate it. It was a good time. It's always a better time after a Chiefs win. Before we get out of here, we do have to ask that you guys please subscribe, rate, and review everything that we're doing on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network. 5-star reviews only. We're in the 5-star business here. If you're listening to us on the podcast, make sure you stick around immediately following this show. We will have all the post-game press conferences for you. Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and any other players that they put up at the podium. I'm Steven Serda, again for Ron Kopp. Thank you guys so much for listening, and Out of Structure tomorrow afternoon with Ron Kopp and Matt Stagner. So be on the lookout for that. We'll talk to you guys soon.